Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I made a video last night discussing strength standards and how they're really low as far as expectations of what people should be able to do. And a lot of people are like, I can't believe you're not discussing body weight. Why aren't you mentioning body weight? Well, that's multifold in nature, and here's what I want to break down. Because I'm talking about where people should be if they're an advanced lifter. And an advanced lifter is anyone who's strength trained and resistance trained on a good enough program that they've milked out their novice and their intermediate gains. And people are like, well, I think some of those numbers are too high that you're asking. And it's like, I told you guys, there are charts all over the internet that are very accepted in the strength and conditioning world, very accepted standardized charts. I'm just going to link them, kind of overlaying some of my training footage all the way through this video. Right? These are not hard to find. And they're fairly accepted in the strength and conditioning world. And here's the question I would ask you. If a person is, say, I don't know, 5'9", and they start at 150 pounds, and over the course of their 3 years of training, they only end up at 160 pounds, why aren't they still a novice? Meaning, if they haven't put on enough size and strength and just overall body mass to even finish out their noob gains, their novice gains, in what world do you people live in to where they can qualify as an advanced lifter even if they've been training for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years? In what world does that even exist? They've only put on 10 pounds of body weight, and hell, some of it might have been fat. And let's be realistic here. What do we expect? What's a reasonable amount of muscle mass for a novice to gain? What do we call noob gains? What, your first 15 pounds of muscle or so? That's your noob gains. Now, a lot of people who are skinny and they start bulking a bit, right, they're going to put on a little bit of fat. And what do we know about body composition and all this stuff? That if a person puts on 15 pounds of solid muscle mass, and they only gain 5 pounds of fat, do they look slightly leaner at the end? Of course they do. We know that. That is understood because they have a lot more muscle to push that little bit of fat out that they gain. And so things like their chest and their arms and legs and everything actually look more defined. Their abs might not look more defined. It will depend. Some people, they will. So 20 pounds of weight gain on a relatively clean bulk, you're going to look bigger and leaner, right? You're going to look leaner if you only gain 5 pounds of fat. So if they start at 150, I expect them to be 170. And every coach would expect someone in that case to be 170 at the end of finishing out their noob gains, whether that takes a year and a half, whatever it is. That's what I expect of people who run my novice program. When I say, well, I want them benching 225, squatting 315, deadlifting 405 for reps. You know, a couple reps, hopefully 5, but okay, 1, 2 reps, 3 reps, okay. That's what I expect out of them. Of course they're going to be 20 pounds heavier. How could they not? Unless they started out fat. And if you start out fat, you're going to gain muscle slower while you cut. You're going to gain muscle, you're going to gain strength, but you're going to have to cut. And it is going to make it slightly harder. But if anyone is standing here talking about, well, I only weigh 160. I'm only 170. You expect me to be advanced? Yeah, because you've only gained 15 pounds of muscle. Do you expect yourself to be advanced? Or are you an intermediate? See the problem we have here when people throw this stuff out there and they argue this stuff? It's the guys who haven't gained size. You are nowhere near where a person realistically should be if they trained correctly for 3 years. I don't think it's unreasonable for a 150 pound, 5'8", 5'9" guy to be 180 at 3 years. I don't think it's unreasonable if they followed proper training protocols. If they followed my novice program or my linear hypertrophy program for the first year, and then they run something like my intermediate off-season program for 2 years, or I don't know, someone else's program, Bill Starr's 5x5, Rip Toes Texas method, whatever they do, I don't feel that 30 pounds of weight gain is unreasonable before they could call themselves an advanced lifter. So of course I don't expect someone who's gained 10 pounds or 15 pounds or 20 pounds to be on the advanced chart, but you're also nowhere near your natty potential either, are you? Because what do I tell people? About 25 pounds of muscle is a reasonable muscle weight gain for a drug-free lifter over the course of their lifetime, which is going to start really capping out after 3 to 4 years. They're probably going to be about there at that point. And they'll spend years and years trying to gain a few more pounds. But that's not unreasonable, guys. And a lot of people say, well, what about people who are really short? You're not accounting for them, because that's the only reason we have the weight chart, because people have different heights. They have different heights. Well, if you're taller or shorter, you're going to have less total mass. And a bigger guy who's taller, a guy who's 6'5" is going to have more strength potential than a guy who's 5'4". He's got a bigger frame. He can put more muscle on it. But he's also going to weigh a hell of a lot more. And the reason I don't bring that up with the weight a lot is because I expect everyone to gain weight as they gain muscle, especially if you're skinny. If you're fat, fine, you need to lose weight. But when we're talking about gains, yeah, I don't expect you to be 160 pounds if your average height. If you have trained hard enough to put on 20 pounds of solid ass muscle, how are you going to be 160 pounds? Unless you have an eating disorder. And we'll go back to that in a minute, but the point is, okay, they're really short guys. That's not a big enough audience for me to make specialized videos for. Who are both? I'm sorry, I see demographics of who watches my videos. India comprises less than 1% of my views. All right, I don't have even 1% in China or anywhere else. So where's this demographic of people that aren't an average of at least 5'5", 5'6", or taller? Every country that I have a significant following in, the average height is at least 5'6", 5'7", minimum, if not more. So that's not my target audience. And if it is, you feel free to drop my numbers. But if you were 5'2" or 5'3", you know what? Feel free to use a different chart. I'm not talking about you, but you are also at most 2 or 3% of my audience. At most. I can't sit around making special videos for people who are 3% of my audience in terms of, well, they're shorter. Okay, when I could simply say, cut the numbers 10%, done. Okay, I don't expect you to squat 400. I expect you to squat 350. Done. See how easy that was? Because you're short. It's fine. But the other thing that we have to deal with is in the other people who complain. It's like people who say, well, I didn't want to get big. Well, if you didn't try to get big and you didn't eat enough to get big because you're obsessed with your abs year round, then I'm not talking about you either, am I? Because clearly a person who is not willing to gain any body weight isn't willing to gain muscle mass. And if a person's not willing to support a lifestyle that allows them to gain muscle mass, they are obviously nowhere near being advanced as a fitness enthusiast or strength training lifter either, are they? They're not, because they haven't gained weight. They haven't gained size. They have not eaten the food to support the tissue growth. In some cases, it's because it's just not their goal. Well, if it's not your goal, then why are you worried about my strength standards? If your goal was not to get bigger and stronger, why would you care about my strength standards? Or if a person has an eating disorder, let's say they're obsessed with keeping ripped abs year round, I can't help you. You have an eating disorder at that point. If that's your obsession, and then you're worried that you're not reaching my strength training charts, you now have your obsession with your abs is now compromised something that is upsetting you, because you think that I'm presenting unrealistic standards, and you say you are training for size and strength. You're not. If your goal is to get bigger and stronger and you're obsessed with staying ripped year round, you have a body image disorder that is now interfering with one of your goals, and it's now caused you distress. You need a counselor. I can't help you there. That's a separate problem that you need to deal with and work out for yourself. I don't have the ability to help that person. But what I will tell guys who are like, well, I've trained relatively hard and I don't have any of those numbers after 3 years, 4 years. You haven't trained as hard as you think you have. You've done a lot of fluff work. Maybe you've done a lot of supersets. You've done a lot of grinders. You've had your spotter help you do forced reps on a bench press and concentration curls and cable curls and preacher curls and all that, but you haven't actually trained hard. Because if you had trained hard on a correct, not even that hard, just consistent on any balanced, well-written strength training program, we wouldn't be having this conversation about those numbers. We wouldn't. And that's what I'm telling people. They need to accept that. They've been given shitty, crappy, garbage routines. And that's why they're not hitting the numbers. It's that simple. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.